Hi, everybody, and welcome to Two Gays,
One episode.
or as it will be known for this episode, Two Gays,
Two episodes.
because we're doing 2 episodes.
We're doing episodes 4 and 6? Or wait, no, just 5 and 6.
We're doing 5 and 6.
Yes.
We might talk about 4 a little bit, but we're mainly going to talk about the Rei two-parter, which is episode 5's. Episodes 5 and 6
Yes.
of Neon Genesis Evangelion.
We've skipped Shamshell. The Shamshell episode can go to Shamshell.
Yes. Good. Bravo. Good job.
Episode 4 has where Shinji runs away, which is a good preview kind of into his core issue, which is he keeps running away but returning, and returning for sort of mixed reasons, like as in it's kind of to seek that sweet validation, but he also ran away because he was lacking that sweet validation.
Yeah.
So but yeah,
Praise the gays. They need it.
and the thing is, with the end of episode 4, we also have that beautiful shot of Misato and Shinji staring at each other for like 60 seconds.
That's a really nice moment.
It is a really nice
I like
moment,
that moment.
and it kind of like it already gives you a preview into Anno's philosophy, which is, hey, if you can drag it out and make it like emotional, let's do it. By God, like let's meet that airtime. So
Though it is the only episode Anno didn't write in the whole series run.
yeah, like
Episode
at
4 is
all.
the only episode he didn't write. Yeah, he didn't have a co-writing credit. He's a co-writing credit on every episode except for episode 4.
Yeah.
Do you, and you know why that is, of course, being a super fan.
I think episode 4 is just very meditative, and yeah, it does give you a glimpse into Shinji will run away and then come back. And that's kind of like a big thing that keeps
More
repeating.
specifically, though, it was not part of the original outline. It just went from the Shamshell episode straight into this Rei episode. And I guess, I don't know who decided it, but someone decided there needed to be one more episode just exploring Shinji's character. And so I guess Akio Satsukawa had to write it. And Akio Satsukawa is I think he writes, besides Anno, he's the one who's written the most episodes of the show.
Yeah,
That's potentially true.
I'm not sure, but I know he's like done 15, 19, 24, etc. So quite a lot.
He did about 8 episodes, I think, altogether. Because he did this two-parter that we're going to talk about, and he did episode 4. And he did Dance Like You Want to Win, Magma Diver. Yeah, so I'd say it's about 9 episodes.
Yeah, and as far as episode 4 goes, I think it is important to just clench Toji and Kensuke and their relationship with Shinji, because I think without it, it would feel kind of weird that they just like are friends now after Silent Phone and whatnot. But yeah.
There's a bit, though that's more in the Rei two-parter where we see Kensuke and Toji sort of bonding with Shinji.
What I'm saying is that it clenches it, because you got the scene with like Kensuke in the tent and Shinji kind of bonding with him, and then you have this scene at the train station where Toji's like, hey, I need you to punch me and whatnot. That's here in episode 4. So
That's in this episode. Okay, sorry. I watched all 3 of them, but they all blur together in my head. So
yeah, so episode 4 is definitely.
I do want to make a little quick observation about that Toji scene, just while I think of it. You can see the nerve guards in the background laughing at Shinji after he punched Toji in the face, and I think that's really funny. The nerve guards are just like,
they're like,
look at these effing
hey,
kids.
what a pussy.
They're literally giggling at him.
He couldn't get in the robot. Ha ha ha. He can't even punch.
It's just such a nice little character moment for like pointless characters. I don't even know their names. They're just like security guys.
Security Admiral Amurao, number 5. I don't know.
That's his name now. That's canon.
Yeah.
Michael is now a co-writer on Evangelion. He named a character.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anything else you want to say about episode 4 before we get started with episode 5 and 6?
No, I think it's just a solid episode. Very nice. I'm glad that they added it, even if it wasn't part of the plan. And it definitely lends some humanity to the whole cast, I think, that has been introduced up to this point. So episode 5, and tally-ho, onward.
Tally-ho. I don't remember the name. I know there's a bunch of names for them. This is Rei 1, Whispers of the Heart.
Ray
Something
beyond
like
the
that.
heart.
Beyond the heart.
Yeah,
Okay.
she goes beyond the heart and to the. Okay. Well.
Okay. So just to start with, let's start with a little bit of a recap. A lot of Evangelion is lore. That's something I wanted to mention. That there's a lot of, for a sci-fi monster fighting television series, there's a lot of like myth. There's a lot of myth associated with this show, and part of that is sort of the myth of what came before, what Gendo and Yui and all that did. And so we open with a scene that happened prior to the start of the show itself, and where they're booting up Unit 0 and they're doing a test. And while they're doing the test, the Evangelion unit goes berserk and it starts smashing its head into the wall. It falls apart. Rei goes flying out of the thing, and Gendo has to come rescue her. Anything you want to say about this scene?
Oh yeah, just the opening hook and whatnot. I think it's pretty cool because it definitely helps communicate that idea that Evas have a mind of their own and that they can just like go ballistic, and they're dangerous to even the people who operate them, right? Because in like episode 2, when Eva Unit 1 went ballistic, it was to help Shinji specifically, but here it's like, oh, these things are dangerous, yo. Like to everyone who kind of is around them. And it definitely establishes that link between Gendo and Rei. Like there's a lot of debate,
which will be very important in these 2 episodes.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate if Gendo authentically likes Rei or not. In my opinion, no. But because the thing is that he only likes Rei beyond what she can provide for him, as well as like emotionally, because she looks just like his wife, Yui and whatnot. So I think there's a connection there, but it's definitely more she's being like objectified by him for the purposes of his like grand scheme, and I think that his like sort of adoration for her is false in regards to, it's not like truly caring about her. It's more of like he's just projecting, if that makes sense. So
I have a little bit of a counterpoint to that, though, because he needs Shinji, and he doesn't treat Shinji well. He doesn't even try to connect with him.
No, but I mean, I think that with Shinji, there's like a fear there, in regards to like, it's more Shinji's more of himself and not his wife. You know what I mean? It's like I'm looking at my younger past self in like a kind of way, whereas like I'm looking at a younger past version of the woman I love, and so it's much easier to connect because Gendo is self-hating and never learned not to be self-hating. So psychologically, he like avoids Shinji because of their similarities, I feel.
Well, this is almost
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, Yui just validated him. He hates himself, like Gendo's worst enemy, and needs healing from someone. That's kind of the whole point, is that like Gendo sought external validation through Yui, who gave it to him unconditionally and unexpectedly, and he never learned to love himself. So that's like,
you loved yourself.
He never got the internal validation, so he just became obsessed. And I think Yui. Rei is comforting in that way because he associates her with external validation. So
she's his surrogate wife, basically.
Yeah, Shinji's more of like the internal validation, kind of the need, and Rei is the want, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That does make a lot of sense, actually, and that's almost the core question of the episode. Is Shinji asking, both episodes, is Shinji asking, why does my dad like Rei, but why doesn't he like me? That's almost what the whole thing is about.
Yeah,
this whole two-part episode. Another thing I want to point out is because this is a flashback, and this is almost Rei's first moment, Rei 2's spoilers, Rei 2's first moment in the series. Where we really see her character sort of coalesce, because the very next scene is her in the stretcher, and they're going to put her in Unit 1 almost right after this. So it kind of explains why she was injured in the first episode. And Rei, up to this point, Rei hasn't done much. I think she's just in that first episode, right? She's just in the stretcher in that first episode where they say, Shinji, you have to get in the robot, otherwise Rei will have to do it. That's her one contribution so far, I believe.
Yeah, Rei hasn't actually done a whole lot in the story. She's been fairly incapacitated for the most part. He does see her kind of like in the hospital in episode 2, and I think there's some brief like she's there to just be like, Shinji, go do the thing or whatever on the school rooftop.
Yeah.
But yeah, she hasn't really been an
So
active part.
what I'm driving at is this is our introduction. This episode will be our introduction.
Yeah, the real kind of intro to Rei. Yeah, our first Rei episode.
Whoa, that sounds weird. Rape episode.
I just
No, that's later. That's later.
I just meant that as a bad pun, y'all. It wasn't. There's no subtext there.
So in typical Satsukawa fashion, most of this episode is just people hanging out and talking. If you look at his episodes, it will be a lot of people, not in a boring way, but it will be a lot of people like, oh, we have to go to a party, or oh, we're just sitting around looking at a computer screen, oh, we're just discussing life. Like, a lot of his episodes are like that. So they're having a little kind of biology discussion. Ritsuko is explaining the physiology of the angels, and that they're, I think she's talking about the angels, where she says they're like 99.7% human. There's a similarity, so there's a lot we don't know.
Yes.
Yes. And then Shinji notices that Gendo, while he's investigating the core, Shamshell's core, he notices that he has burns on his hand. And he wonders, well, why does he have burns on his hand? And that's kind of the whole inciting incident for this episode. And I think one thing I want to talk about, because you know a lot about this, is the sort of like a filmic story structure for these episodes. So the inciting incident is the first thing that happens that sort of sparks what the story is going to be about, right?
Well, like, yeah, an inciting incident is essentially the world put out of order, right? So you have the world in order, everything's expected, and what's the kind of event that happens that kind of sets off the course of the story, something unusual that happens to like nudge the overall quest of the character. So in this case, it's like Shinji's, eyeing his daddy, and his daddy's talking to Rei, and so he's just like, I should learn more about my dad and Rei and whatnot, and
Yes.
So the world in order is that basically Shinji and his dad are kind of at a distance, and he sees that his dad is capable of being kind of intimate with someone, which is Rei, and that kind of pushes him to investigate more into Rei and like what does he see in her. So
it makes her so special. I also think it maybe makes him respect Gendo, because to him, Gendo is just this absentee father figure. But now he's like, oh, he ran into danger to save someone's life. That would almost, I think he's almost questioning his own view of Gendo a little bit.
Yeah. Wait, is this where? Oh, was this where did Shinji? Yeah. This is where Shinji kind of sees like Gendo and Rei and whatnot, like talking at a distance.
That's later.
Yeah, it's a little later. So the inciting incident is learning about the hand burn, right? Okay.
Yeah, the hand burn, and then he starts thinking about Rei, and the next scene is they're at the pool, and Shinji's eyeing Rei because he's curious about her, and then his meathead friends are just like, "Hey, you like your thighs?
Look at her
You like
thighs,
your
look at her
boobs?"
chicken wings." And then and he goes,
she's so voluptuous.
He's just like, I wasn't staring at her because I thought she was hot. I was staring at her because she's alone, I think. And
he's wondering, why is she alone? He just wants to know more about her.
Yeah. He's a gentleman, unlike these.
He's a gentleman.
Unlike these these
troglodyte pinheads.
Toji and Kensuke are bad influences.
They're very bad. But that also kind of establishes Shinji's character more, that he is a gentleman, sort of. That he does respect Rei, whereas his friends are just like, think about her thighs. He
respects Rei, and he gets to touch her titty later on in the episode. So look where respect gets you. To all the guys listening out there, respect will get you much further. But
Oh, okay. Michael, you're alone. I'm abandoning the podcast. This is no one gay 2 episodes. Michael will tell you things like that, and I won't be here. Okay. Next scene.
And then, Ritsuko and Misato are kind of chatting over the dinner and whatnot, and Ritsuko gives Shinji the card to go give to Rei.
Yes, that's the end of the scene.
Yeah.
That's the... So, again, the way Satsukawa writes episodes, the midpoint, when the like, woo, Evangelion, when those credits flash, it's almost always an escalation, usually. And again, the threat, the scale of this episode is so low that the what would you call it? The escalation is just, here, you have to go to a girl's apartment and give her this card. Please do it for me.
Yeah, so in the
just
case
an
of like
existential
script
crisis.
structure, midpoint is often called the first culmination, or like there's a midpoint twist is what we kind of refer to that as. And that's something to shake up the dynamic of the plot line in this. So it will kind of, it's like an event that happens that essentially like changes the course of the rest of the story. And in this case, it's giving the card so Shinji can have like direct one-to-one confrontation with Rei. That's kind of the midpoint twist. Is like now he's going to actually, like, instead of looking from afar and being an observer, like he has the whole episode, he's going to meet her face to face, enter her world.
Exactly.
So
Enter her world, find out what she's like, because that's what he wants. He wants to know who she is. Why does my dad like her? What's going on here?
yeah. He's going to give her the card and then give her his V card. So,
Oh no. This can always become, the threat will always be there. 1K, one episode, okay?
look, I am gay, but, not gay enough not to make jokes, I guess, about this sort of stuff.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying I could walk out of here anytime.
What I love about the introduction of Rei, like the first shot we get after seeing the title card, Rei 1, is just these buildings like repeating over and over and over again into the distance. And there is like a shot of Rei later on, and I think it's episode 14, I think, which is the recap episode, which has the second half of it be like new content. And it also has a similar shot of just a bunch of Reis lined up in like this arc pattern, like these buildings. And so you have like this repetition. It's foreshadowing her being cloned through these like buildings kind of visually. And they're also, you hear this mechanical clanking in the background constantly, which is like, oh, she has, there's a mechanical element to Rei. There's this artificialness. And
she's a produced person.
Yeah, and in general, you get a lot of square compositions, a lot of repeating kind of like square imagery, which squares are like very, in visual language, kind of just like very sturdy, like a mountain sort of deal, an immovable force. It's kind of linking Rei to being sort of this immovable force type of deal, glacial. And I appreciate it because her character is very much like that, where it's like, I think they literally describe Rei as sort of being like a mountain later on in one of the trippy sequences, where it's like, I think it's in like episode 25 or 26, and it's just like change happens gradually, but it's still there, like,
Right.
And
yeah,
I think it's kind of cool. I love the attention to detail when Shinji walks into the apartment and you see like these letters, these envelopes wedged into the mailbox, and the mailbox is like overflowing. She hasn't checked her mail ever.
It's probably all junk, because like, who's sending Rei a letter?
It probably is all junk, but it's gotten to the point where she's not even really opening most of it. And then you walk in and you see like these footsteps on the ground, and it's because she doesn't take off her shoes, which is customary to do in Japan, is like remove your shoes before you enter the home. But she's like dirtying the floor and just walking in because it's not really a home,
No.
So
she's the consummate soldier, and she's a slob because it doesn't serve, like, cleaning doesn't serve a purpose to her utility. She's a utilitarian character. That's how people see her. That's how you were saying Gendo sees her. That's how she kind of sees herself a little bit. And that'll be challenged later on in a very famous scene. But yeah, she just doesn't care about anything that doesn't serve a purpose.
You even see the square patterns repeating, by the way, in the ceilings and the walls. Like there's just like perfect squares in her apartment everywhere. Yeah. It's very visually like Stronghold-esque. And
Tatami Galaxy.
Yeah. And you get a glimpse of like also into her character later with there's pills and other such like medical things, and Ritsuko is actually giving her those so she can maintain her body, because it will fall apart without her AT field won't hold it together if she doesn't consume those pills. So kind of interesting stuff, just like all these visual clues as to things that will be important, 20 episodes later. So
yeah, all these little things that are
yeah.
And then we have what may be a controversial scene. I'm not sure. Some people might think it seems pointless, lascivious, sexual, unnecessarily sexual,
especially in regards to minors.
Yes. Though,
but
14-year-olds aren't necessarily minors in Japan. According to Japan, they're not really minors. Just to put, not to say what I think, just to put into context what is going through the writer and director's mind at the moment.
Do you think the rainbow was a little too far?
The rainbow?
Yeah, there's a rainbow that appears after he falls on her titty.
Is there? I don't remember that. I just watched it and I don't remember that.
Yeah. It's
I think the direction of this scene is probably more than it needs to be. I don't know that we needed him to fall on top of her and pull the underwear drawer out and have them fly everywhere. That maybe made it more interesting visually, like something was happening, but it's also, why her underwear drawer, honestly? Like, why not just her shirts? I don't know.
The drawer could have been full of letters or something. I would have probably given like a similar visual flair. So the thing is that when it comes, it does serve an important function with the character, which is like she doesn't see her body as anything worth getting like flustered about. It's just she has no autonomy of the self, which could go into like, if this is how she's reacting to Shinji be like, accidentally breaking her personal boundaries in this way, then the implications with Gendo, or maybe like a grooming kind of thing, are kind of there a little bit.
Ooh.
Ooh. So
it's possible,
but also just like the lack of like, she doesn't see herself as worth.
There are 2 moments in this episode where she actually genuinely gets upset. She does not get upset when Shinji falls on top of her and pulls her underwear. She doesn't get flustered. She doesn't start blushing. She's not embarrassed about this. It's just a thing that happened, and she just reacts and moves on. But there are 2 things that upset her. She does not like that Shinji is wearing Gendo's broken glasses that she's kept for some reason, which we could spend a lot of time talking about why she kept them, if you want to. And the other time she gets upset is when Shinji says something like, "Why would I worry about a guy like him? Like, why would I? My father is a horrible man. Why would I worry about him?" And she turns around and she slaps him. Those are the only 2 moments where she shows anything out of the ordinary, anything out of her usual demeanor.
Ano just like comes in and he's like, I wanted to communicate that she loved Gendo because she's a mommy, and I wanted a mommy character. That's my best Ano impression. There you go.
Okay. I don't think that's why she gets upset about that, but I think we'll get more back into this later with the second part, but I think almost she doesn't have respect for Shinji, but she has a lot of respect for Gendo. I don't know why she respects Gendo, but she does. She has a lot of respect for Gendo.
I think it's because he sees her as worth protecting more than even she sees herself that way, right? With earlier in the episode, right. It's like, I care about your safety and stuff like that. And he showed her emotion, like smiled at her, and she sees that even glimpse of humanity directed at her as like enormous, when you've been deprived of that kind of thing your entire existence. And then it's just like, oh, he cares about me more than even I care about me, that type of deal.
Yeah.
So, which is,
And
I think,
who
her
knows?
misreading things. It's kind of like I said, I'm not really convinced that Gendo has authentic affection for her or like care, especially compared to Shinji. I feel it's like Shinji is more concerned for her and her well-being in general than Gendo is. Gendo's still willing to march her off to die, potentially, whereas like Shinji later in episode 6 was like scared to death at the idea that she could be dead or in danger.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think Gendo sees her as his wife. I think he sees her. I think she's a surrogate wife. I think he just looks at her and everything he loved about Yui and everything that Yui made him feel, he sees when he's with. I think you're right. I think Shinji reminds him of himself, and he's not fond of himself. But Rei reminds him of Yui, and he loves Yui, and he loves everything about Yui. So that's why he has so much. Because I think he has affection for Rei, but I don't know if it's authentic, like love or anything like that. I don't think he sees her as a tool really either, though. In my mind, I think he sees her as a substitute for something that he cares about. So I think he does care about her, but not for her own sake. He cares about her because he reminds her of someone else. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, there we go. I got that.
Yeah,
I got
projecting.
There. Yeah!
Projecting, like I said.
Projecting, absolutely. Yeah,
So,
that's the word.
And I feel like it's sort of funny because Rei's affection for him is also very similarly. I think she's projecting more onto him than he's actually giving. So there's kind of like that mutual projection. This is why Ava is really good. I had like some guy come at me, I think 2 days ago, and was just like, Ava sucks. It's like character dynamics are not like complex at all. And I'm like,
Yeah,
because I think they really
I don't
are.
think that's accurate.
Even someone like Rei has an enormous amount of relationship, like complexity with, like, her dynamic with Shinji is not quite the same as with Gendo or Misato or Asuka. That there's always just something slightly different. Like, I love how Asuka tries to make connections with her in this later on in this like gossipy kind of way. And it's just like, that stupid Shinji. And Rei's just like, whatever. And she doesn't even care. And I think it's interesting that like Rei isn't really interested in talking smack about anyone whatsoever.
No.
She's much more easy to connect with when you're trying to just like reach to her emotionally and how she's like doing at that moment. But like Asuka is obviously incapable of that later. But I just think it's like sort of an interesting dynamic that she comes out more with Shinji's approach than anything,
Yeah, she's responsive to Shinji.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that happens is, in true Satsukawa fashion, again, if you look at most of his episodes, the angel shows up 21 minutes into this episode, and it's over 3 minutes later. And there's a second part, but this is not a rarity. Like, all of his episodes, the main action conflict does not start until about 3/4 of the way through the episode. And it almost has nothing to do with what's been happening up to that point. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's not a rarity.
No. It's a Rei episode, though. God damn it. It's a Rei episode is the point. This isn't an episode about Ramiel, even though Ramiel's everyone's favorite angel, even though if you asked someone to name an angel, they would say, oh, the diamond one that shoots thunder at people.
Yeah.
The diamond one. That one's so weird. That's the one they remember, but it's not even important in the episode it's in. It's a Rei episode. It's a Rei story.
Yeah. And so it's kind of interesting because, this episode doesn't really resolve. It actually kind of ends in a sort of tragic kind of way as far as like Rei and Shinji goes. The last interaction between the two is her slapping him, really. And then they're back on the battlefield, and so this won't get resolved until the next one.
Which completely contradicts what I said in the last one, where I said most episodes of Evangelion have a beginning, middle, and end. This one does not have an end.
This is one of the exceptions, I feel. So.
Yes, one of the few exceptions.
And
so then we... Yeah.
So as far as the next one goes, Showdown in Tokyo 3.
Rei 2, also known as Rei 2.
Also known as Rei 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yep. Okay, so and then we have part 2. Part 2 begins, and Rei, I think this is the first time she pilots an Evangelion, and they have an opening shot where Toji and Kensuke, I think this is where Toji and Kensuke are sitting on top of the school, and they see them coming out, and they're cheering Shinji on, redeeming themselves for being such, like, sons of you know what earlier, and they're now Shinji has someone in his corner who's not part of his little circle. Which is a nice little thing. Nice little moment.
Yeah.
And it also shows that there will be 2 Evangelions working together. This time Shinji showed up. He tried to fight the angel. He just got taken out immediately. Do we want to talk about Ramiel? I just said Ramiel wasn't important, and I stand by that. But
none of the angels are really as important as how they affect the character dynamic and what they're supposed to do. So in Ramiel's case, Ramiel comes in and it forces Shinji and Shinji and Rei to have to work together in this situation. And Rei has to, in particular, defend Shinji, and I think it's an interesting way for her to get out of her comfort zone a little bit, but it's also just like this very like self-sacrifice, I'm gonna just take the heat kind of deal, which plays into her like self-destructive nature a little bit as well. But yeah, Ramiel kind of like forces her into a specific role here, which I think is really cool. The design is excellent for Ramiel as well, with the just the simplicity of it. I think originally it was supposed to be a giant floating head kind of deal that spit lasers from its mouth, and they ended up simplifying it to like a diamond.
Yeah, don't like that. And he is the Angel of Thunder, if anyone was wondering.
Yeah, which
symbolizing the
which goes which again like goes to show that they did do some research before into the Christian stuff before actually doing it. So
yes. I will point this out every time we do an episode, what the angel represents, just to prove that point to the naysayers out there in the audience, the imaginary doubters, and I'm gonna beat you to the punch.
Do you know what Shamshell was the angel of?
Oh. Shamshell is actually the angel of the morning. I don't remember if he showed up in the morning or if there's some other suggestion, maybe morning something, since he's the phallic angel that everyone remembers.
He
maybe
he's the angel of morning wood, you could say.
Yeah, I was implying that, but I wasn't gonna say it. But if you're gonna say it, then go right ahead.
He's
going to be a little classier than that. But
he's a phallus, and it questions Shinji's masculinity in this episode.
I think he might show up in the morning, too. I think when he flies in, the sun's rising. I might be making that up. I haven't watched that episode in a while. Anyway. Shamshell, we're talking about Ramiel. This is the Ramiel episode. I think I've said everything I have to say about Ramiel.
Ramiel is best girl. And
Ramiel is best. In a lot of people's opinion, Ramiel is best. Who's your favorite angel? Just off topic a little bit. Who's your favorite angel?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, as far as the most crazy thing that happens to the character dynamic, it's probably Kaoru, but in terms of the is it
Liliel? I want to guess. I'm guessing it's Liliel.
I was gonna go for Liliel or Armaziel. like either one of those.
Ooh, Armisail is a very good answer.
Yeah. I was
Armisail is the tapeworm.
Yes.
We should probably say Leliel is the zebra one. That's the shadow
the
one.
black and white shadow one. And
black and white shadow one, and yeah.
But yeah, Armisail as well was like one that came to mind. So either one of those two are kind of like really good. I love Zeruel's episode. I don't love Zeruel himself. So
who do you think my favorite is?
Zeruel.
It's either Zeruel or it's Ariel. Zeruel is the one with the paper mache arms that's in Ava 2. He's in the climax of Ava 2, and he's the angel of strength.
He's got this like kind of mummy sort of design to him in a
he's got that creepy
way.
face. He fires eye lasers. And then Ariel is the sort of bird-like one that's out in space and plays what's the song called?
Hallelujah.
Plays Hallelujah over and over again.
I'm sure it's not actually called Hallelujah.
It's probably like Brahms. It's not Brahms. Is it Brahms?
Second Symphony, third movement.
Yeah,
whatever.
Something. Whoever the composer is, their name, their third movement, whatever. Because I think Hallelujah is just German, isn't it?
I'm not the right person to ask about that.
Okay, anyway, back to the episode. We're getting a little off topic, but one thing I really love about this episode, though, is we get to see it almost. It's almost we get to see the unit working in cohesion. So it's not just we need to rely on Shinji. Shinji, you need to go out and fight the angel. They have a plan ahead of time. So Masato makes a whole plan, showing that, like, in my mind, Masato is really the deuteragonist of Evangelion.
Yeah,
she's really the second most important character.
She was introduced before Shinji even. So
yeah,
the car shot.
Yeah, so Masato, and so she's almost the guiding force for most of this episode. She's the one making the plan. She's the one who puts it forward. Everyone kind of doubts her, and she's the one who really her butt is on the line here with what she wants to do. And in fact, we really get to see all the characters working together because Masato comes up with the plan. She pitches it to Gendo. Gendo approves it. Fuyutsuki's standing there looking very calm. Ritsuko doubts her, but she's going to help her do it because they need Ritsuko's help. And then Shinji and Rei are the ones who are going to execute it.
Yes.
So it's everyone working together. And there's a really good bit of direction here I noticed when I was watching the episode where Masato relays her plan to Gendo. Gendo says, I have no reason to say no to this plan, so we're going to do it. And then we immediately cut to Ritsuko's reaction. So it's like everything is, even though this is all just kind of boring exposition, we're just moving from point to point to point to point very quickly without stopping to slow down, which makes the exposition really lively. And you're being like pumped full of information very quickly, but you don't notice it because of the solid direction in writing.
Yeah. I love the shot with there's this one shot with Masato and Shinji and Rei, and they're all standing in like silhouette lined up like that, and in like kind of a diagonal kind of formation. Mm-hmm. It's just a really striking shot. In general, Ava will have like really interesting choices that not really a lot of that you don't really see this kind of stuff done a lot in animation in particular, where it's silhouette that's like mimicking the exposure of like a camera, and it is really cool. Lighting really matters in Ava, where how things are lit is very important. Yeah.
Yes. So, and it shows that all the characters are working in tandem. I think is it? Would you say that's the purpose of that shot?
Oh yeah, it's like a very I would say that it is kind of just like very aligned and in order, like soldier-esque kind of shot. You know, I would see this sort of shot done in like a war movie or something like that, honestly. So like I could easily see like this being used for like a military formation or something like that. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It shows that they've got the plan in order, but there's like a lot of conflict in the composition because it is a diagonal line that they're ultimately making.
And really, at this point, we've spent a whole episode and a half developing these characters, all three of these characters, in a really big way, I think.
Yeah, it's
So
all
they
culminating
really,
here.
it's culminating, and they took their time. They really took their time. They didn't waste any time. Nothing here is wasted, but it's very efficient, but it's also not too quick. They don't skimp on it because they think it might be boring. They're not like, oh, we don't want to do this because we don't want to have this scene where Shinji's talking about his dad and Reis laughter. That scene is really important, and it sets up the conflict, that's in this episode.
In a way, this is kind of the end of an arc, like the end of Act 1. Episode 6 is kind of debatably the end of Act 1. Yeah. We're going to sort of explore some like fun and world building and lore, and give Misato an active role in the next episode, Jet Alone, and then Asuka will be introduced in Asuka Strikes,
which is absolutely the introduction of
after that.
That's absolutely the introduction of that too.
And
though it doesn't really start until 8, I think, or 9. I don't think it really starts until 9.
Act 2 specifically, but yeah, this is kind of like what I'm saying is that things culminate in a way where Shinji gets calls from, like everyone being like, we're in support of you. He's got a unit now. He's got like a foundation of people that he can pilot Ava for. And specifically with this one, it's like Rei is somebody that he's going to also fight alongside in order to protect, which pays off that episode 1 where he like got into the Ava to fight for Rei in the first place. So I think this kind of like comes full circle with the first episode in a way. It feels like it very much completes some kind of narrative arc before things get shaken up a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely. And it pays off. They saved the day together. There was one more thing I wanted to mention. I have in my notes. There's a shot where Shinji's holding the sniper rifle and they're setting up the tension with the sniper rifle and Ramiel, and you can hear the exposition in the background from the dialogue that happened before. So that's just so efficient. They're setting up the core tension of the action scene while they're also explaining what's going on, which is really cool.
Yeah. I also super duper duper love the shot with Rei and the moon as well, and kind of like her association with the moon, which plays into the larger Ava lore as well, where it was like,
oh, absolutely, the white moon.
Yeah, the white moon, kind of like Adam comes from the white moon, and a piece broke off and landed in the South Pole, etc. And it kind of ties together that idea that Rei is like angelic, that there's something off about her, but moons are also like associated with like maternity and motherliness. So
women in general.
Menstrual cycle and other things like that. Like, so
the moon's feminine, the sun is masculine.
The sun is masculine, the moon is feminine. La Luna,
In the classic sense,
not that it should necessarily be whatever. As rigidly gendered, but like historically, specifically.
Just to be clear, we're not passing judgment on anybody. We're just explaining.
If you want to be a manly moon, you can do it.
You can do it. If you want to be the moon and you want to be as masculine as possible, I believe in you.
Yeah. I know. I know a couple ways to moon people, so.
God damn it. Okay.
But yeah, this is also, I want to say something about Ramiel here, which is also, this is like the first episode where we have real hard stakes with the angel. Like they're advertising, they're using this writing technique called advertising, where, we have like a specific time limit. And I mean, they've done that before in battles with Shamshell as well. They had like the timer ticking down. It's like, you only have this amount because your umbilical cable is broken. But here the stakes are even higher. The angel is coming in direct contact with the Geofront and everybody who's in like Nerve HQ. And so this is like the first time where it feels like an angel has gotten really close to like basically killing everyone. So the stakes are really, really high here, and I don't think they're going to get this high until like probably Zeruel in episode 19.
Yes, which I mean the Zeruel episode. I mean, we'll talk about. We're going to talk about the Zeruel episode. That's one we're going to do for sure. The fact that he just blows up the Geofront immediately is obviously to contrast with something like it's to show the raising of the stakes even further.
It's like, this took a while to drill through, but then like Zeruel just kind of marches in and is like here immediately.
They're not even ready.
Yeah,
he does it so fast.
And then like when Kaoru comes in later, it's just like he just
He didn't even have to break
yeah,
through
he
it.
just
He
like
walked
it's like
right in.
butter. He's just there. So
He's just
he
there.
made it.
They let him in.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a really good escalation in respect to that, but I think this
And those are
also
all Satsukawa episodes.
this is
The
all
Kaoru episode,
like
the Zero episode, this episode are all Satsukawa episodes. Anyway, sorry, go on.
this is like definitely marks the first time that the stakes have been raised in like a significant way. So yeah,
Absolutely. And then the final scene's really cool. We made a parody of this scene at one point that no one should watch ever. Where I think it was more of the rebuild version of the scene that we were parodying, but
that's the thing.
yeah, where Shinji comes in to save Rei and tells her to smile for him.
Smile for me. Yeah.
Smile for me.
Yeah, you heard Misato screaming in the background about Pen Pen being blown up by Ramiel. So
I was. I don't even remember. I thought I was Rei in that. I don't think Rei talks, does she?
no.
Oh, it's Misato. Okay.
Yeah.
Pen, no. I don't remember what I said.
You're like, Shinji, where are you? Pen, no. Yeah, exactly.
This was a couple years ago.
It was like 10 years ago.
This was a long time ago. We had a lot of fun back in the day.
Yeah, I was trying to kickstart my animation career that never happened. So
only people knew about them. But people, please, do not tell women that you don't know that well. I wouldn't say Shinji knows Rei that well yet. Don't tell them to smile for you. Don't tell them to do anything unless you know them.
Well,
or you're like
in
you
this
need
case,
them to do something.
It's a little bit more poetic, right? Because he's telling her, he's basically communicating. It's like you should express your emotions. Like it's okay to feel something right now. Is essentially what
it's written in a very sentimental way. It's not a demand. It's she says, "What should I do?" and he says, "You could start with smiling."
Yeah.
Like so she's looking for his input. It's different.
It's like it's okay. You're alive. Everything turned out all right. So it's okay to express that and whatnot.
And it's actually, so this is the third time she breaks character. Really, in the two-parter is when she smiles for Shinji.
I think. What do you think about Anno's self-criticism? Because he's always said that he regrets this episode because he feels like she had nowhere to go like after this moment. In like a self-critical way. It's hard to say that a creator is really valid when you have all this like writing staff that is also pulling a lot of heavy lifting and have their own ideas of how like the arc is progressing, but at least like the showrunner always considered this to be a mistake. Like he thinks that it should have happened at the end of the series.
So this is a Satsukawa Anno episode. They wrote this together. I tend to think that moment is more of a Satsukawa thing. The moment with the smile. It feels a bit more Satsukawa to me, but it could have been. It feels enough like Anno that it could have been Anno 2. Do I think it was a mistake? I don't think it was a mistake.
He thinks that it should have been at the end of her like character arc, which I don't know. I
understand.
I agree with that. I think that's like the thing is that the end of her character arc is when she obtains her own agency to like act upon her own will.
Mm-hmm. That's when she's basically a different character though. She really I think there is something to that because beyond this episode, Rei really only has 2 or 3. She has episode 23 and she has episode 9 and she has episode
as far as Rei 2 goes, like she did cry involuntarily during episode 23, so there is also that like instead of just being emotional because you're allowed to, like being given permission to, she does it involuntarily, which I think could be like
I the way I'm interpreting what you're saying or what he's saying is almost Rei didn't have anywhere to go, so she really had nothing to do between now and episode 23 when she dies. But I'm saying there is some validity to that because she really doesn't do much between episodes. There's the moment in episode 9 where they're doing the DDR stuff, and then that's really it. And the episode where they all have to work together, her, Asuka, and Shinji have to fight Matariel, the Spider Angel. That's really it. She
Well,
doesn't have a
there's the
lot
part where
to
she
do
like
otherwise.
gets the bomb in episode 19 and tries to blow herself up.
Yes, that's true. She does do things, but they're not character moments for
Well,
her. Like the point of that bomb scene in my mind is for Shinji's sake, but there's nothing that really progresses her character beyond this smile. This is almost the end for her. So I think there is some validity to that.
I think it's kind of like a little subtle because it's hard to really say with a character that's designed for intrigue, because a lot of like her character is to be learned about and kind of unveil and figure out what her purpose is and what her character is about as the series goes along. But like, when she's blowing herself up in that case, she's like acting without orders to do that against Gendo's wishes even.
Right.
And so it's like and her interacting with Asuka is like slowly kind of opening herself up to being pushed out of her comfort zone more and more and more and more. And so it's like very subtle and kind of in the background a lot of the time, but it's still like it does actually sort of all gradually build up to her eventually rebelling against Gendo, which is the end of her arc. So
Yes.
and so
Which we kind of see here a little bit when she sees Shinji as Gendo. I think
Yeah.
that's almost her letting Gendo go in a way, or seeing him in someone else.
yes, it's just like, oh, they are similar. His goodness, her perceived goodness of Gendo is in Shinji, and she can see that there's like more in people than she expected. I guess she was just very single-minded about Gendo being this compassionate person in her mind. And maybe that's opening up a little bit at the end here. But I think she does have, like, you can probably trace her arc in a subtle way throughout the whole show and kind of see how it like eventually leads up to that ending conclusion. So I sort of disagree with Ano. I think what Ano means to say is that she's not foregrounded nearly enough past this point. Because it is subtle and it is very much a background element, and Asuka really does take a lot of the spotlight as the secondary like female pilot. But I think Rei is a valuable inclusion to have, and does have a very interesting and unique kind of character arc for a woman character in anime. So,
which I do want to talk about. I want to actually talk a little bit about the role women play in Evangelion and the way they're written. And I think it's very progressive, and I think it's very ahead of its time. And I think it's ahead of its time even today, largely, is something I would say.
it's kind of sad, but it's sort of true. So.
I think so. I think so. And I say that on the episode where we watched an underage woman's underwear go flying through the air all over them. That's not important. That's superficial. That's important to say. That's superficial. But the episode is ultimately about Rei's character. It's not about, and it's about. So you either have things go one or two ways. You either ignore their womanhood or you overly focus on it in a way that's obvious. And I think, especially with Rei and Masato and Ritsuko, who are all important parts of this two-parter, you completely lost my train of thought. I'm going right back on it. You see them as people, even though their womanhood is important. It's not overwhelming. It's not all they are. It's an important part, but it's not the only part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's even little subtle things here. There was a moment that I wanted to mention that we kind of ended up skipping over, but where Ritsuko says about Rei, she's like, "You're gonna learn something about her. She's very bad at it," and she's like, "Your father." She's very bad at it, and he goes, "Bad at what?" And she goes, "Life," and she kind of half smiles, and that's almost foreshadowing, I think, her physical, sexual, personal relationship with Gendo.
Right. Yeah. I definitely see that as kind of like foreshadowing that. So,
which in a way makes Ritsuko kind of it shows her own autonomy, that she's having like this purely physical relationship with a man in the 90s. That's like so taboo, and she's not really punished for it at any point. No one she only shames herself. No one shames her and says like, "Oh, you're such a whore." Like that never happens.
yeah.
and that's really Satsukawa. 'Cause I'm very familiar with Satsukawa. I've watched Gilgamesh, which is a show he was the creator producer on, and it's the same sort of thing with the female characters in that show. They have a lot of pathos. They have a lot of inner pain, and we see that with Ritsuko and Rei and Masato too. They have a lot of inner turmoil that we don't see explored openly. And it's sophisticated. It's not simple, and it's not that they need to be saved. They have to deal with it themselves.
I also find it fascinating that I think prominent female characters outnumber male characters in the show too. Like
By a lot.
that's pretty atypical for a mecha.
It is.
Like, having seen Gundam, I can tell you for sure that that's not the case there, or really in Ideon, which is another one of Anno's influences and whatnot. So it's
Gilgamesh is actually an influence on Evangelion as well.
It's just interesting that they do kind of, that female characters are so present, and the Eva units themselves are all gendered as women as well. So which is cool. It's a very kind of like female centric oriented sort of show in a lot of respects.
In a lot of ways,
yeah.
The mother is the most important character. Really, Yui is the quintessential character in the whole show.
Yeah, she's like this thing that Shinji like aspires to acquire in like some sort of ways, like the affection from his mother, and like, but it's like completely. Well, he actually aspires to get the affection from his father, but he's like antagonistic and sort of the negative, like rejecting kind of thing, and like the mother is sort of portrayed as like this understanding, accepting, like holy, like saintly kind of thing and whatnot
for all the characters,
but it's not in a like a virgin whore dichotomy or anything like that. It's like the strength of motherhood, but the absolute acknowledgement that it's like, Misato is a mother character, but she's like highly provocative, and she's not shamed for that either. It's just who she is. So
I do love the phrase virgin whore dynamic, because I know exactly what you're talking about, but it sounds so crass.
Oh, the virgin whore dichotomy is it's an academic kind of term.
Yeah, I can guess. I mean, it's Mary Magdalene and Virgin Mary.
Really, yes, and I think Eva finds a good line to walk where, like, these women do have relationships and they are sexual beings, but none of them are portrayed as like whores or sluts or anything like that for doing that.
No.
So
for just sleeping around.
Yeah. It's like Ritsuko has a love life, Misato has a love life, but this is just a natural part of being. And then like being a person. Yui as a mother is not necessarily like, it is like holy and all this sort of stuff, but motherhood is also portrayed really badly through like through Asuka's mom and Naoko, like Ritsuko's mother.
Or even Yui abandons her child.
Yeah, they're flawed women, but at the same time it's like motherhood is a really important part of what shapes us, like women in our lives in adolescence and childhood kind of like really help craft us as people. I know my mom was like a huge influence on me growing up, so it's kind of, I grew up with a single mom for a large part of my really, really young years. So it's I think it's cool. It's cool that it shows like the power of women, and in a maternal way, but not in necessarily one that like fetishizes that role or even says that it's a requirement, because like Misato is like maternal.
Misato's not really Shinji's mom. She's like his big sister. She looks out for him.
Well, exactly. I mean, like her whole thing is that she wants to be kind of like a mom to him, but is not really able to do that. She's still kind of a kid in her own way. So it's sort of juvenile. Yeah, it's someone in their 20s trying to raise like a 14-year-old kid. I could say in my mid 20s I definitely don't feel like an adult at all. So
in my early 30s I often don't either.
Yeah. So. I think Eva captures that really well, where it's like Misato is like a character that's she is kind of still struggling with, she's better at coping and has found coping methods and shit like that, but it's she's still struggling.
I love that moment at the beginning where she's like, Shinji, what are you up to? And he's like, nothing. And she's like, when you say nothing like that, you're drawing attention to yourself, and I don't like that. Stop that. She's like bullying him almost.
I mean, through the whole like, you know, divvying up the chores, and then it's just like, we're gonna play rock paper scissors, and I'm gonna basically, I don't know. It feels like she rigged
like
it.
your big sister. It's
What?
like your big sister. Big sister, like, I don't want to do the chores either, so we'll figure this out by rock paper scissors.
Yeah, Shinji also gets forced into a maternal role for her, which is ironic, right? Where he does the cooking and the cleaning and things like that. So it's sort of ironic.
As we established in this episode, she can't cook. She can't cook instant noodles. She messed it up somehow. I don't know how.
Yeah, that's kind of incredible. I'm like, how did you mess that up? So
Did she pour too much hot water in? Did she did she try to add extra ingredients that weren't necessary? Like, what did she do? Oh, and the relationships between the women. That's also important. I'm sorry. I wanted to quickly talk about that. Ritsuko and Misato are good friends, and they're not catty at all. There's nothing catty about their relationship. They don't fight over men. They don't, they're just good friends. It's really interesting. It's really cool.
yeah, it is cool.
And it's not obligatory either. It's not just like, oh, the two women. Like, you get a sense of their relationship and why they're friends. I like Ava.
Yeah, I like it too. Anything else you want to say for this episode, or are we?
I think that's it. I think we talked it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed. The next episode we'll be covering, I think, will be Asuka Strikes, episode 8.
Yep. Time to shake it up. So.
Time to shake it up. We might talk again a little bit about the ones in between as well. But yeah, that's it. So thanks for listening.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of 2 Gays 1 Episode. I hope you liked it. If you did enjoy it and you'd like to listen to more, this week we are launching our Patreon exclusive mini-sodes. So if you pledge $6 USD or more on our Patreon, you'll get access to our mini-sode collection, or mini-sode episodes. We'll be launching these alongside our regular episodes every other week, and we'll cover a different general topic that won't be the same thing we're doing in our main episodes. So this week we're going to talk about gay representation or homosexual or queer representation in general in Western animation. If you're interested in that, just check out our Patreon at www.patreon.com/grandrose. Grand Rose is all one word, GRANDROSE. And yeah, so if that's something you're interested in, go check it out. Thanks again for listening. Bye for now.